So we'll give it about 10 more seconds, and before the poll closes, you're at 75%. And you know, it's always so cool to have this technology now for real lifetime polling, totally relevant to the now 74 people that are attending this session, because we do want to know where you are. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh yes, let's see if we can get over 80%. If anybody has not voted. I know there's no, no, we got it 80, so I'm going to close. Okay, so let's close it right there, and I'll share those results. And so you can see now, I see 25% of the people are seeing 2016 in production, so that's an excellent result. This information for our speakers use, we'll have this available later. Of course, this will be also in the recording. So I'm going to go to the next poll. Let's see. Let's go to the next poll. How much do you know about R? And I'm going to go and launch that. We asked this question in our last session, and we do want to know where people are in terms of their usage of the R technology. So go ahead and everyone can play on this one. So we could see 100% response on this question. And while we're waiting for the results to come in, I will mention that if you have questions, there is a question box at the bottom. We will be monitoring questions, and either I or Nellie or UC will be able to answer your questions. We do want to know. We will be responding. We're very interested, especially in your use case for production, any questions you have about the technology, because this is an excellent chance for us to see what people are doing with SQL Server R technology. So we're now at 81% on this particular poll. I'll give it a few more seconds and we'll be at 1 minute, and then I'll close the poll. Okay, and then I'll share those results. So we have seen that for today's presentation, we have some new people. Glad you're attending today to hear about R technology and how to use it with SQL Server. And I'm going to give one third poll that our presenters asked me to share, and this is going to be about R server specifically. So let's go to the third poll here. This one has to do specifically with SQL Server R services, and what we do want to know for anyone who has, this is a mark all that apply, we want to know if you've installed it, whether you're using it in production, whether you resolved issues with installation, or whether you've had those issues. And I see, now this poll is going to be interesting to interpret right now, because I know not everyone attending today has used this technology, so we're only going to see a fraction of our attendees responding. But I can see already 43% of the attendees have voted out of a total of 78 attending. So let's give this a few more seconds again for people to respond. And certainly I'm glad to see people using this in production, and for that group, certainly we would be happy if you just in your question box want to give any shout outs of how it may be working out for you really well. We'd love to hear that too. So you don't have to just have a question, but any feedback you have for the team, even on positive stories, we'd love to hear those. So I'll go ahead and close that poll and share that poll with all of you. So we can see maybe 15% of those who have installed it. And what I have here in the results is 53% voted. So 53% of today's audience, roughly half of today's audience have installed it. And then, well, let's see. How do I interpret that? When it says 77%, it's just referring to the number of people that clicked the box who responded to the poll. And it could imply maybe some people are using it in production, but they didn't personally install it. So there's a number of ways to interpret this poll. So I know it's a little bit clunky, but we can see that some people have had issues with installation. All right, now let's just quickly go to the presenter, and I think we're going to go to UC as the presenter. Is that correct? Yes?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so let me give you a short verbal here.
Mm-hmm.
Introducing them for today's presentation. We have, let me go to the summary. All right. Our presentation today is SQL Server R Services Configuration and Management. That's the title. And we have Umachandra Jayachandran, and excuse me for maybe slashing your name, but he goes by UC. UC, certainly a friend to our chapter, and as well as Nellie Gustafson, also another friend to our chapter, and they're going to be presenting on this technology. They are program managers both in the SQL Server and technology, and specifically in this R technology area. So I'll hand now the audio of the session to UC.
Sounds good, thanks. Yeah, so can you guys hear me fine? I'm hoping, yeah, because we're using a laptop for the mic, so.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so today we are going to talk about like just the installation aspect, what are, you know, some of the configuration steps you need to do, why you need to do that. So this is kind of the top level. By the way, can you actually see the presentation? Okay.
Okay, we can see your screen now. It says prerequisites.
Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, so just to start, so there is a, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the SQL Server samples GitHub. So there is a folder in there for our services. We just published like some custom reports for SSMS. I'll show you that as part of the demo. So those reports can be used to you know, look at many of the installation settings, learn about some of the features, and also see the code behind you know, those queries, right? So I'll show you those things too. Okay, so today we'll cover basically installation, configuration, and then how to install packages on the SQL Server machine. Okay, so that, okay. So yeah, so the first thing is, so we integrated the whole R setup into the SQL Server setup itself, right? So this is a screenshot of the SQL Server setup where you go to the place where you do the feature selection, right? So there are two features here of interest. The first one is under database engine services, which is the R services. So this is when we say R services, that's what we mean. It's basically the R capabilities which are installed as part of the database engine, right? So that is like an instance specific feature. So that means if you install multiple instances of SQL Server on the same box, each instance gets its own copy of you know, the R binaries. So they are basically side by side. So this allows you to potentially run, I don't know, ASP1 and RTM, or when we have the next version of SQL Server, you can run you know, both side by side. So that's basically the instance level feature. And then in the shared feature, we have what is called the R server standalone. Again, in terms of the bits itself, both of them contain the same thing, like the Microsoft R Open, which is the R runtime, and then the R server, which is essentially our proprietary, you know, package, which provides many, you know, statistical algorithms, which basically can work in parallel and so on. So yeah, so these are the two pieces. So if you're looking for SQL R services, you will check the first checkbox, and then you would use R from within, you know, T-SQL. The second checkbox is just like an R installation, so you will just use some RID and you know, interact with it. So yeah, so that's pretty much the screen here. And again, this feature is available in all editions of SQL Server. So you can install from Express with Advanced to Enterprise Edition. So there are some differences between edition in terms of just the perf and scale aspect. Otherwise, functionally, the same scripts will run on any edition. Right? Okay. And then as part of the configuration, I mean, we now add a new service which is called the Launchpad, which is shown there. And this is a new service which will actually help the SQL engine to launch our scripts, manage them, do resource governance, and so on. So this is basically the feature selection part. So in Azure today you can provision a VM which has SQL Server 2016. Currently this is not installed by default in there, but that's something we are working on, or providing some shortcut, right, if you're going through the portal. But that's just something to keep in mind. So now after you've selected the features, you do the engine configuration, like where to put the folders and so on. So then we have this one screen which is needed for getting consent for the R open itself. So the main reason is the R runtime is distributed under a GPL license, right? So this is not Microsoft's software. So essentially we need acknowledgement from the user in terms of hey, you kind of allow the SQL Server setup to go and install this thing on your behalf, right? That's really what this screen is. And what this actually does is you basically have to click accept here, and it's going to actually check if that SQL Server machine can actually get to the internet, right? Because we actually download the R open and the R server from Microsoft.com and install it. They are actually not part of the SQL Server media itself. So that's kind of the high level, the purpose of this screen, right? And on the machines which doesn't have internet access, this is something we've seen with many, SQL Server installations. What you will get is another screen which basically prompts the user to go and download 2 CAB files. Again, this location and all of this is all documented in Books Online also, but we also show the links here. And what the user needs to do in this case is go to those links on a machine which has internet access, download these 2 CAB files. They are probably like 100 meg or something together. So you put them in a location where the SQL Server machine can essentially get to it, right? It could be a network share, or it could be a folder on the machine. So this is one of the things you would see when you run the R setup, depending on your internet access. So yeah, so the 2 things you download is the CABs. One is for R open and another one is for R server. And then all of this can be done through unattended setup, right? Like you can pass command line parameters to SQL Server setup. So there is a new flag which you need to specify. This is the same as accepting the license terms, and that's something to keep in mind. And then if you encounter any errors, the main file to kind of look at is this r setup.log, right? This again goes into the standard SQL Server bootstrap setup bootstrap directory. So this is pretty much the configuration aspect, right? So there's a feature selection, and then this consent or specifying the CAB files for offline. Now then you proceed with setup and you can install, right? So now here I have captured some of the common setup issues which you've seen, and just wanted to quickly talk about each one and how you can avoid it or whatever, right? So the first one is the 8.3 name generation on the volume. So this one of the things you can use to check this is use fsutil 8.name option. So this is again needed because there are certain functions in R which uh, fails if the directory name actually has like a space. So because of that, we actually require the setting on the volume, which basically contains the data root. Because we have a working directory for all the R scripts which are in the same location, and you need the 8.3 name so that the R script working directory can be set up appropriately. Today setup doesn't check for this. That's something we are looking at to see like how many people hit this, and then we can maybe add a pre-check and setup, right, which warns the users. So that's something we are looking at. Then the second error, this is something we've seen sporadically. We still don't know the root cause. Primarily we've seen this on Windows 10 client OS, and with some machines which have some antivirus software installed. What happens is during the R setup installation, we actually create a temporary directory, right, with a name, and basically extract all the files, and then at the end of the setup we rename the directory, right. What happens is there is some race condition which results in Windows either keeping the handle of the directory still open, or this antivirus is maybe scanning the directory or something, and when we go and try to rename, it fails, and then as a result the setup fails. Today we don't have a retry for that, but that's something we are looking at adding. So the way to get over this is really, you basically remove the feature again, just the R services feature, and then you basically reinstall. The number of times you hit it is very, it's kind of unpredictable, but retry is really the only mechanism we've seen so far. And then the third one, log on locally writes. So as part of the R scripts, R services installation, we create some local user accounts. These are actually used to isolate the R scripts execution between different users, right. Say if SQL login 1 runs an R script, you don't want their R script to be able to see somebody else's session and data. So we use user accounts to do the isolation, and we actually log on as that user, right. So in order to do that, you need the log on locally writes in Windows. So one of the things we've seen on some customer environments is basically they have some group policy which prevents any accounts from having this log on local rights, right, other than administrator accounts. So in that kind of environment, you will have to create a group policy exception for that machine or for that account, right. So that's something to keep in mind. We've seen like maybe like, I don't know, 3 or 4 customers so far, mostly like kind of government organizations, and where they have very strict control over the machine configurations, right. Okay, and then the next one is the TCP/IP not enabled. I'll talk about the SQL compute context later, but this is basically the ability of R scripts to actually connect back to SQL Server. You can think of it as like a loop back connection, right? So you call the R script, and then that tries to connect back to SQL Server to maybe fetch results from a different database or do something, right? So many SQL folks are aware of this. Like today when you install say Developer Edition or Express or Eval, the TCP/IP network protocol is not enabled on the server by default. So that means SQL Server will not listen over TCP/IP. So today the SQL compute context code actually tries to make only a TCP/IP connection. So as a result, I mean, you will get like an access denied error. So the thing to keep in mind is you basically enable TCP/IP protocol from SQL config manager. So that's that one. And then the last one is just a restriction which we have today. We've had like 1 or 2 customers ask about this. So today our services is not supported on the always on failover clusters. So this is the traditional shared disk Windows Server failover cluster installations, right? So if you have SQL in such environments, you cannot use our services there. But it's fully supported with the availability group clustering, which is the other SQL technology. Okay, yeah. So this is just to summarize the setup issues. Okay, this slide kind of shows what is installed for R. Like I said, all the R stuff goes into the instance directory. So wherever your instance is, you now have a new directory called R services. So that's where all the R binaries are present. And similarly, if you have CU1, CU2, SP1, they will all patch this directory also appropriately. So this is now integrated into setup. And then there are a few directories to just to know about. Like the R libraries or packages go into the library directory by default under the R services folder. And then R also has some local documentation directory. They have like bunch of PDFs there which you can look at. And then the bin directory is where some of the R console, the command interpreters and a simple GUI is present. We'll show how to use that during the package installation. And then the library RevoScalar, this is the Microsoft R server package. So this is the one which provides all the high performance and parallel algorithms. So this is just to show like what's the some of the main R directories involved. Okay. So yeah, so this screenshot shows the new service Launchpad. I talked about the user accounts, right? Like we create by default. Currently we create about 20 user accounts. So from the config manager you can change that number to a higher number, lower number. This is how you do it. So the thing to keep in mind is this only decides how many concurrent R scripts can execute from different users. So if I log in and run 100 R scripts concurrently, all I need is just one of these external users, right? This Windows user accounts. So yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And then there is also this reset external users password. So this is something we added because some companies have group policies which can enforce certain password policy timelines and so on. So if you have to reset the password for these accounts, you can actually come here and do that. So that's what this is. And then one other tip here is on Windows 10 with the latest anniversary update and also Windows Server 2016, I believe, you won't see an icon for SQL Server Configuration Manager. So you will have to go to Computer Management and you will see a node there for SQL Server Config Manager. I'll show you during the demo. Okay, and this one just shows like the user accounts which we create. Okay, so we'll now look at what are some of the configuration steps you need to do. And in the beginning I talked about this SSMS custom reports that can actually do a lot of these things for you. So I'll demo that in a bit. So setup actually just all it does is it provisions your installation with the binaries and that's it, right? the feature itself is turned off in the instance by default. I mean, this is similar policy we use for CLR and other features, right? Anything which with a surface area outside of the engine or which is not part of the core, database engine, we basically have a policy of having that off by default. So there is a SP configure option which needs to be turned on. So that's something that has to be done. And similarly, there is a new permission which is needed for non-admins to run the R scripts. This is again a management thing, like, because you don't want everybody to just run any R script, right? So that's what you would do. And then apart from that, the user will have to have access to whatever data or code which they need to execute on the database. And then yeah, the user accounts, we talked about it, and one of the other configurations which setup does is the Windows firewall rules. So again, we wanted a lot of the R stuff to be secure by default, right? Because one of the things with R is it's a very powerful environment, right? Like it's got packages which can run system code, it's got functions which can go to the internet, download files and so on, right? Even the simple install package can do that automatically for you. On a production, SQL Server, we don't want this process to go out of the machine, so to speak. So by default, we have Windows firewall rules which add rules to exempt all the R scripts from getting out of the machine. And so if Windows firewall is enabled, those will be automatically enforced. And then yeah, this one I'll quickly talk. So this is what we called implied auth. So the scenario is you want to retrieve multiple results from SQL Server. Today the mechanism which we have supports only sending one result set, right? And often you might have to get data from some other table which is unrelated to the core R script. So one of the things you would do is make a ODBC connection or whatever JDBC connection from the R script, and you want to use Windows auth, right? Because you don't want to embed passwords in the R script in plain text. So in order to enable this, you need to add the SQL R user group to the instance. This only requires connect permission. And once you do this, then the SQL Server will automatically impersonate the caller for the R script. So this is one of the configuration steps which is required. Okay, so with that, so we'll cover resource governance as a separate topic, but just to quickly talk, I'll just recap some of this. SQL Server has what is called resource pools today, which can govern resources for any SQL queries, right? So similarly, we now have what is called external resource pools for all the external R scripts execution, right? So we create one by default, and it's always enforced. On Enterprise Edition, you can go and change the settings. But on the non-enterprise editions, you cannot change it. It's basically always enforced. And the memory is set to 20% of the machine resources, right? These are some of the settings you can change here. We'll look into that in detail in a later session, but that's just to give an idea. Out of the box, you don't need to worry about it unless you write some R scripts which are consuming a lot of memory and you need to change it. That's one of the common things which we've seen. These limits are all enforced using what is called Windows job objects, and I'll show some of the performance counters which can be used to monitor that. Yeah, so that's pretty much that one. And then some of the out-of-the-box capabilities to monitor are like the DMVs. We have performance counters, and then there is a log directory for extensibility, which is of interest. So if you get some failure about Launchpad, for example, You can go look at that log to see what kind of error you're getting, and maybe there is like a KB article or something, or you can file a bug with that. So that's one of the troubleshooting mechanisms, right? And then the CU1, CU2, yeah, there are some fixes. One specifically for the performance counters. On the RTM instance, no, the Windows job object performance counters don't show up, and that's something we'll fix later. So that's some fixes to be aware of. Okay. With that, let me go to the machine here. So on this machine I have actually two instances of SQL Server 2016 installed. I haven't configured anything. Initially I'll just show the directories, right? Like, so this is how it looks, right? Your instance directory under d: program files. Now you have an R services directory there, right? So this is basically all the R stuff. Similarly, if you go to the other named instance, which I called SQL 16R, it has its own, copy of R. So now let me pick this instance, and this is the directory I talked about, this extensibility data. So here we create a working directory for every user which we use to run the R scripts. So this is a place where we capture like console output, and sometimes the R script can write data and it goes into this directory. And the directories is also cleaned up automatically by SQL Server through the job objects. And so typically you don't have to do anything here to manage this. But this is how we create. And if you look at the same thing for the default instance, you will have the accounts, and each of the names map to the users. So if I come here and do net user, I mean I see all these users, right? So it's the same users there. So that's the data directory which I talked about. And then similarly you can go to the log and extensibility log. So these are the place where the logs are present. So this ext launcher is like the SQL error log. This is for the Launchpad service. So typically this is what you would see there if everything is fine, right? And this R launcher is just for all the launching of the R scripts. Usually you don't have to go look at it and do anything with it. But that's something available if you want to dig into like some of the things which are happening here. Okay, so now let me show first the computer management thing. So this machine is Windows Server 2012, so it has the config manager here. But if you don't have it, what happens is you go to this computer management. So this is and there if you go to services and application, you will see the same config manager thing. So this is where you would come on a machine like I talked about, if it's like Windows Server with the anniversary update and Server 2016, right? So here you can come and manage, restart Launchpad. Similarly, under the network configuration, here is where you would enable TCP/IP protocol, for example. Here I will just show you this one. So you can come here to Launchpad. So if I want to say reduce the number of accounts, I can set it to say 5, and then I hit apply. So 5 means 5 different SQL logins can now execute our script concurrently. That's what that number actually means, right? So that's now set, and if I come back here, actually you can check here first. So you saw that the user accounts are gone, right? Like now it has only MS SQL Server 1 through 5, right? So that's basically gone. And today I think we don't clean up this delete those directories, but that's a bug we hope to fix soon. Yeah, so that's pretty much some of the simple, configuration things. Okay, so with that, so now one of the things I did is I talked about this SSMS custom reports. So I actually downloaded those here. So I have them here. So now I can go to SSMS. So I have connected to both my instances here. So I can right click and go to reports, and this is how you would access like standard reports which are built in into SSMS. So you pick custom reports and it's going to ask for a location, so we can browse to that. And let me just pick this one first, configuration. So here it's just saying like you're going to run external, some other report, so just make sure it's from a trusted source and so on. So now this is going to bring up the report. Oops. Let's see. I've had the SSMS crash on machines with some high DPI and some video cards. Maybe this is one of that. I don't know. Let's see. Let me connect. Nope. Okay. This doesn't like it. I'll connect from my machine. Yeah, sorry about that. It's actually a brand new VM. I just installed it yesterday. So I'm going to connect from my machine. It's loading. Okay, so let me connect. I'll just connect to some server which I have here. So you right click and then do reports, configuration. Okay. So yeah, so this is what you would see, right? Like on a machine which doesn't have all of these enabled, you would actually see like a red box, and actually I can try connecting to that machine from here. But I might have to exempt firewall rule. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'll forget. So you can actually look at the code here, like if I do view SQL script, it will show what is the code we use to figure out some of these options. So that's something you can do. And one of the things this report also shows is what is the R directory, lib paths, other properties of the R runtime, like what version it's running and so on. They're just some informational things here. So then the other report which you can use is this one, like the resource usage. This shows by default like how much memory R scripts consumed on this machine, how much is SQL Server currently consuming. So currently SQL is taking about, I don't know, 90 gig, and the OS is like 192 gig. And the max server memory settings, like SQL is set to default, so that means it's just going to consume the whole machine. And I talked about the external resource pool. It shows here like this is about like 40%, and this one is also 40%. Shows that information. And then if you are running scripts, it will actually show the usage, stats and so on. And there are other, things like this shows like execution statistics, how many scripts have run, how long has the scripts run on the server ever. how many parallel executions, and so on. And here are some of the Microsoft, R server package functions, which ones you've used. So this is just to show like very high level. And let me actually start an instance here. I want to just quickly show one thing. So basically the report which has the configuration option, this one, if the server doesn't have the options enabled, there will be a configure button here. I just want to show that one. So let me connect SP configure. So I'll actually first turn this off, right? The SP configure option. Right. And let's restart SQL. Come here and hit config. Yeah, see now here you see the configure instance. So you can actually click this and this will actually do this restart, and that's something which is available as part of this whole reports. And actually if you restart, it will probably say restart is needed. Yeah, so it says restart is needed, blah blah blah, and then you can restart SQL Server, and it should be all set. Yep, there you go. So that's pretty much it. So with that, I'll hand over to Nelly to talk about the packages. It should be, so how do you switch?
Okay.
Yeah, Nelly will cover the package installation part.
All right, that's great. We do have, we're 7 minutes before the top of the hour, but feel free to continue. And for those who may need to leave early, we are recording this session.
Yeah, let me take the questions.
Actually, you'll be leaving on time, so I'm not going to say early.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we got some echo. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
We took care of the echo. Okay, all right.
Great.
So quickly then, we don't have that much time left, but using R, of course, you're going to want to install packages because that's one of the key strengths with R. There are so many packages out there that you can use. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to quickly walk you through like how would you actually install a package on the server. So let's start here. The SSMS reports that UC published actually yesterday on GitHub, if you download those, there's one called R Services Packages. And if you just like this, if you import that as a custom report here, that's what I've done, you'll get an overview of all of the packages that are installed on this instance. So you can actually see the version of each package, what package it is, and a lot of our packages actually also have dependencies, and you can see some of them here, and what license, what version, etc. So, I'm sorry, maybe I should, it looks like I'm not sharing my screen here, Mark.
I see, what I see is the package installation slide, run as administrator.
No, yeah, okay, yeah, package installations, but that's not what I was actually showing you a bunch of stuff here.
Okay, let's go, is it on your screen or UC screen?
That's UC screen.
Okay, let's go.
So let's
just try it again.
Yeah.
Make another attendee presenter.
Yeah, it's usually prompt like
it still says my screen is presenter.
Yeah.
How do I close this?
Is that correct?
Yeah, like, so I got like a
I
prompt.
need to switch to me now.
Oh,
That's
switch to you. Okay, hang on.
okay, I'm sorry about not being clear. Oh, sorry. All right. So I just talked a bunch, and this is actually.
Okay, so we got the background radiation, and we're good.
Can you see my screen now? Can you see SSMS and a report?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So what I was saying that if you run this report, and as you see mentioned, you can just download it from GitHub and you import it as a custom report here. You'll get an overview, and this is super helpful to give you an overview of what packages you have, and you can actually see the different dependencies because a lot of our packages do have dependencies. You can see the name of the package, the version of the package here, and the lib path. Because if you have different R runtimes installed, let's say that you do some stuff locally and then on this instance, you might have different lib paths. So this is where you can see that, okay, these packages are on this lib path, which is the SQL Server ones. What I would like to do now is that we have a stored procedure here, and it's using a package called ggplot2. And ggplot2 is a very popular graphical package that enables you to basically do a bunch of plots. So if I would execute this stored procedure now without having that package, let's see what happens. It would probably tell me that that package is missing. Yeah, we got an error here saying that ggplot is missing. So let's do something about this. Let's go and install. So how do you do that then? You can do this from R tools for Visual Studio. You can do this from RStudio. But with the installation that you just did, like if you install SQL Server, you will have in this folder on R services bin x64, you'll have the R GUI, which comes with SQL Server. So if you run this as administrator, very important to run it as administrator, and actually I'll already have a window here, you get this, a prompt where you can actually write R code. So what I want to do now is that I want to install this ggplot package. So let's print install packages. This is how you install a package in R, ggplot2. And when I press enter here now, it's going to go online and download the ggplot2 package. So it says that it's, downloaded the package and installed it. So let's go back to this report now because I couldn't see a ggplot here before. Nothing there. So let's refresh this. And we should have ggplot is a long list. Yeah, there we see it. ggplot2. Perfect. So let's go back now and execute this script and see if it actually is generating a plot that we can actually view in one of our reports here. We'll make sure that we give you all these scripts in this demo so that you have those when you're trying out yourselves. So let's then go to, we got the plot, so let's refresh this. This is an old one, see if we can get the latest plot. And this is actually using the ggplot package to plot these graphs. It's based on the iris dataset in R. It's a dataset that comes with R, so it's easy to experiment with, and it shows the different species and the petal and sepal lengths. So it's just a simple example to show you how to install a very popular package. We don't have any time left, but just to add that we are working on improving the whole package management experience. For example, we're working on functionality that would make it possible for you to have, private or public packages, because if there are a lot of users, you might need to separate, the packages. Not everyone might want to use a specific package. So that was all from us, I would say.
So,
Great. Let me just comment quickly. We are at the top of the hour, so I do understand this is the end of our assigned slot. If you see Nelly, if you're able to stay longer, let's see if there's any other outstanding questions. I think a lot of them have already been answered already, and in fact, I think all of them have been answered.
yeah,
Went ahead.
yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we are all up to date. Okay, so we do have a question here. Do you have any comments on high availability or DR, which is disaster recovery architecture for R? Give me comments on that.
Well, yeah, it's integrated with the SQL DR and HA thing. So, for example, if you can run this on always on secondary also, but you have to install it on both of these, right? But otherwise, in terms of backup and restore, you have to basically back up this directory along with the existing MS SQL binaries. And it's the same thing. You just treat it as any other directory, and it can be restored from backup. But the R scripts itself, I would say you should put it in your source control system and version it that way, like any other SQL Server code.
Yeah. Right. And of course, in terms of versioning, a way to do that would be through Visual Studio.
You mean the source control for R script?
Source control, sure.
Yeah. Currently there is correct. Yeah, R tools for Visual Studio is there, so there is actually a latest preview which has some better integration to generate some of the SQL code also. So that's something we can probably cover in a different session.
Excellent.
But you can use RTVS. Yeah.
Great. And someone asked about posting to YouTube. I'm going to try to post today. We have had some technical issues on our side, but I will for sure send an email to the distribution list letting people know when the YouTube video is available. Another question about sample packages from Microsoft. I think that's a general question. And I think that will be in the GitHub, right?
Yeah, currently I don't know of any. We are not publishing packages, but we are working on other libraries which we are going to introduce as part of SQL Server. We want to add more machine learning, functions, right?
Great.
Currently these are all statistical things, but that's something we're looking at. But otherwise you will find that in the GitHub samples, essentially.
Right. And I'll add that there is a Microsoft R open distribution which has some packages that were added from the Revolution R technology, and of course we would recommend that.
Yeah.
Good question here about the compatibility with 9.10 for R services. I'm not sure what that means.
9.10. I don't know. This latest version is 8.3 or something like that. R server version. The
He's talking about running it on 2005 and 2008 R2, which is not available. I'll answer that. You do have to have 2016.
Correct. But you can set up a link server from 2016 instance to your 2008 production server or something, and then get the data. That's fine.
Okay, link server. So there's an architecture.
Yeah.
Oh, someone said link server's bad. Well, you know what? 2016 is awesome. Go get the developer edition now, which is free. By the way, download 2016 developer edition from Microsoft website. And I would highly recommend that too for data scientists that are working here. A lot of times you are in development, and it is an appropriate way to start coding some things before you do put it to production. So that's available right now, and I would like to encourage you to lobby within your organization to upgrade your hardware, and if they're not willing to do that, we always have our Azure solutions standing up a VM there, or we have the data science VM too, right?
Yeah, there is a data science VM, yes, yeah.
The data science VM, I'm going to point to that, which is not just this tech. I think SQL Server R Services is on there. I don't remember.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so I'm not, there was a number of things that were released on that, and I'm not remembering by memory what is on there. But that's a VM available in Azure. So you can go look for that. Question here, is patching done for our services?
That's part of the regular SQL Server patch, so you don't need to do anything special, like you install CU2 and it will automatically update our services if there is
Right.
any fixes. Yeah.
And then people would be responsible for their own R distribution, whatever they're using.
No, the R open gets installed with SQL Server, right? So they're not using
Oh.
some separate. So that it's part of the SQL installation.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. And then that is the R distribution, which does have the additional packages because it is R open.
Yeah, R open and then R server. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Okay. So what? We got many comments coming in. Great presentation. Thank you very much for UC and Nellie. Thank you very much for coming today. We certainly appreciate your time. We look forward to any other future presentations you would want to bring to this group. And I think with each iteration, we're getting our technology hiccups ironed out. I will verbally mention that several people told me SQL Saturday Orlando was canceled this weekend, so don't show up. And I put that note on the chat box. And other than that, thanks everyone for attending today. Appreciate your attendance, and I'm going to stop the recording.